Hi guys and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about 2-in-1 DAC/headphone amp coming from SMSL. It's called C200 and this one is fairly affordable at $220 or euros. Basically nowadays it's the same. And it's an interesting device. It offers good value in my opinion, but why is that? Stay and find out. C200 is a fairly compact device and it houses both DAC and headphone amplifier. You can use it only as a DAC because it has line outputs, and it does have both single-ended RCAs as well as balanced, but balanced ones are not XLRs but TRS. Those are actually more compact and able to be placed on this thin body, thin backplate. And when it comes to digital inputs, we have all the usuals. Coaxial SPDIF, then USB, which is in form of USB-C port, and optical. Also, there is a Bluetooth antenna provided, so you can connect it directly with your phone if you wish to do so, but Bluetooth connection is the lowest quality connection. It provides the lowest fidelity, so I strongly prefer one of these wired options. Then in the front you can see one volume knob that doubles as a button, and there is a small basic display and two headphone outputs. One is single-ended 6.35 millimeters, while the other one is balanced 4.4 millimeters, also called Pentagon. So for its price, it's quite feature-rich. And no complaints there. Even the power on paper looks pretty decent. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'll put that on the screen. So really, if you just look at it, connections and features and power, everything sounds great for 220. But that leads us to how it actually sounds. And C200 doesn't really deviate much from what SMSL is known to sound like in the last few years, basically, when they started tuning their devices to sound a little bit warmer and fuller than the average competitor at this price range that's shooting for highest possible level of details and offering the most analytical sound. SMSL actually, for some time now, in their DACs and headphone amps, is going the other way around. They offer quite respectable amount of details, but they always focus on really nice tonal balance and full bass line, full mid-bass and mid-range. And it's not any different with C200. I didn't detect any sort of excessive sharpness or etchiness in its sound. When I listened it on its own, it just sounded well balanced and rich with details in the mid-range, in highs also, but the bass line is well present. It's not overemphasized, but it's full, it's there, and the same is true for the mid-bass. And that all creates a sound that seems pretty neutral to me, but maybe ever so slightly on the warmer, fuller side of things. And that description of the sound is true no matter if you're using line outputs on the back here, basically using it only as a DAC, or you're using headphone outputs, utilizing its head amp too. So it's basically the same sound character on both of these, as far as I could hear. But as you know, the true test of any device is how it fares against the closest competitors of a similar price. And to find that out, I compared it first with Sabaj, I don't know how it's actually pronounced, A10d. This is a pretty decent device that I've just recently reviewed, and it costs a little bit more than SMSL at $270 or $299 maybe currently. I think there was slight price hike after its release. It's built great and it sounds pretty balanced and neutral, but maybe ever so slightly on the drier side of things. When you compare them directly, you immediately notice that C200 is kinda warmer but a little bit softer sounding. It doesn't have the same amount of grip and control over the bass line as Sabaj here, but its bass line is warmer and fuller sounding. And while objectively I would have to give points to A10d regarding the bass line here, I know very well that some of you would prefer this one simply for its fuller and juicier tonality. And similar stories with the mid-range, where A10d sounds a little bit crisper and sharper, whereas C200 is a little bit softer on edges and slightly again warmer and just a little bit more mellow. And again, strictly technically speaking, if you want to hear the most details and texture of tones and just really great separation, A10d does that a little bit better, but C200's softer and mellower presentation just might suit some people more than what A10d is doing. That said, when it comes to just how dynamic and energetic everything sounds, and that especially goes for like sudden drum strikes or plucks of strings, for example, you definitely notice that A10d has a little bit more of bite and energy and slam when it needs to show that in a song. For example, like in this song, it will simply sound more energetic and more engaging with A10d than with SMSL. On the other hand, if you're listening to something that's maybe not a great production, it maybe started out as a little bit thin and harsher recording, A10d might push that just over the edge and sound a bit hard and not as musical as with C200 here. So to sum it up, A10d does offer greater insight into the recording, greater grip over bassline, and it's just a little bit more energetic and slammy than C200, and it comes at a slight price increase, so it's not even that slight, it's $80. But C200 is on its own a really good sounding device, and some of you might even prefer it to Sabaj A10d because it does offer fuller, juicier, but softer sound signature, more mellow sound signature. Then probably the most direct competitor out there would be Topping DX3 Pro Plus, which comes at $200 if the price is still the same when I reviewed it. And that one is probably the most analytical DAC head amp that I've tried at this price point. It offers class-leading detail retrieval, it's crisp and sharp and clean sounding, but it does lack natural full tonality, especially in the mid-range. And because of that, I was not a big fan of the DX3 Pro Plus. If you would compare it to C200, this one, SMSL, definitely cannot match just the sheer level of details from high frequencies and that amount of texture from the mid-range. And also, DX3 Pro Plus is more dynamic, more engaging when it comes to just rhythm and bass. But personally, I would still choose C200 for myself before that topping, because it just sounds more natural. Mid-range through C200 sounds full and lush, and vocals are rich, and they just sound very present in a natural way, whereas they do sound thin and depleted through topping. And just in my personal opinion, that part is really important. If tonality is pretty skewed towards highs, that creates something that's harsh and tiring and thin for my ears, especially for the longer periods of time. So just if you would make some sort of table that has clarity and detail retrieval and baseline punchiness and then highs extension, Topping DX3 Pro Plus would probably win on points. If you just categorize everything and put it into a table or some sort of graphs, DX3 Pro would emerge as a winner. But if you actually take both of these devices and start listening to them, without any doubt, I'll give that to C200 as a more natural sounding, more musical sounding device. Finally, if you step up to something more expensive like SMSL M500 MKII or maybe Topping DX5, both of these will have more detail retrieval, but also more full-bodied and more energetic sounds. And these do sound better, but that's quite okay because they're also twice the price of C200. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that C200 is not one of those devices that can compete directly to price your equipment, and it disrupts our view of the market like, oh, this is the next big thing. But it's a really good sounding, musical sounding, natural sounding device. And for its price, it's probably one of the best all-in-one DAC/headphone amp units that I've heard. As I mentioned, some competitors will offer more details, but will lack something else. Whereas C200 maybe doesn't excel in any area in particular, but it does everything really, really well. And when you combine all of those sound characteristics into a whole, it makes for a really good and pleasant listen. And because of that, it's one of those devices that is not picky about music genre. You can listen to like vocals and electronics and rock and roll and old recordings, bad rock and roll or pop recordings that are maybe a little bit thinner or harsher sounding. Through this SMSL, that will not hurt your ears. You can listen to that easily, as well as you can listen like new good audiophile acoustic recordings that will also sound great with this one. So if you're after a DAC amp of this price and you don't like sharp analytical sounding devices, which is actually the sound signature that's most common in this price range, SMSL C200 is one that you should strongly consider. Now that would be all for today, guys. If you liked the video, then click that button, comment down below, subscribe, and also consider becoming a patron. That really helps this channel bring more interesting reviews. See you next time. Bye.